To do as I stand where the stone is kind of facing away from me when I'm sharpening this knife, and there's a fresh thing of oil on there. As you can see that oil moving on the top of the stone, and we're going to use that oil not only as a friction to help with friction on the knife and to help to get a nice edge on the knife, but also as a guide of our angle. And so as you move this knife along, you can see the oil where that knife's not touching. So it should be moving a little wave of oil evenly across that stone, and you can see where the oil is slipping up underneath the knife if you don't have oil piling up in front there. And so what I like to do is I like to put 2 fingers on the blade and push down slightly so that you've got even pressure and you're moving that oil all at one time, so that there's no oil slipping past the blade. And that's just kind of a good guide to know that you've got your knife at the proper angle and that you're catching it all. See that? In one swipe and I already got more oil that second time by than the first time. Because as the knife edge starts to wear down, you can get some gap between the edge and the stone, and that oil is allowed to pass through instead of be forced forward with the blade. And you can go backwards or forwards. Once I get the blade to where it feels, when you get a blade to where the edge is right, it'll kind of feel like it's sticking to the stone. And you'll kind of feel that attraction to where it's kind of, as you put it down, and I'm putting pressure with this finger here on the knife because these knives are kind of got some flexion to them. And so I can push down, and as I push the tip down, I put that down, that should all be touching. And I can move that way. And when I go this way, I'm putting pressure with my thumb and finger and doing the same thing. Tip down, and then I can move that oil here. When you're sharpening any knife, if you don't feel that, it's almost like a little tackiness. It's almost like that joint between the blade and the stone is so perfect that there's almost some stickiness to it, like you feel like you're stuck to the stone. If you don't feel that and you're not moving the oil consistently, then your angle is wrong, okay? Because if I set my angle here and it's not where it's supposed to be, it'll feel different as it goes down the stone. And so it's all about feel, and it just takes a little bit of practice. But the more you sharpen knives and the more you kind of get used to it, you'll begin to feel, you'll be able to tell right away how dull that knife is and how well you've got the edge on it as you begin sharpening it. And like I said, you can use that oil as kind of a guide. And then as I think that blade's getting where I want it, I'll kind of let up a little bit of pressure. And now I'm just kind of real lightly, and I work my way down to where I'm doing one pass. And I'm not super light, but I'm not bearing down on it either. And I'm simply just trying to hone that little bit of excess. So what I always try to do when I'm looking at a knife that I'm sharpening is I'll actually look at my edge and make sure that this sharpened edge here, you can see that difference in the line where your edge bevel begins. That should be pretty consistent running down the length of the blade. If you've got a real wide spot, then a real narrow spot, then a wide spot, that's an area, that narrow spot's an area where it wasn't touching the stone. And so that'll usually help you to know if you've got the right angle. And then also making sure that both sides of that bevel are the same thickness from front to back, from edge to spine. So you want to make sure that this distance from here to the edge is the same on each side. If you've got that right, it should be nice and sharp, and you shouldn't see any areas that don't look like they've been worked on. Okay, so you'll see some of this area here if you're missing it, especially on the tip. Sometimes it can be hard to get that just right. You'll see that area real shiny, like it hasn't been the stone hasn't hit it yet, so it looks real shiny like this. And so you'll want to go back and concentrate on that. And if your tip isn't getting sharp, you can always put a finger on the tip just to make sure that it's down on the stone as you're sharpening. And for me, doing leather work, the tip of the blade is very important, especially cutting out kind of compound curves and different types of patterns. That the tip is usually kind of where I start, especially like in a real tight inside curve. I'll start in there, and so I need that tip sharp so that I can cut that really well. And then, like I said, once you think you've got it, I'll do a couple passes, and then I'll go where I'm just doing one. And on a stone like this of good quality, it doesn't take a lot. You don't need to spend an hour and a half over here sharpening your knife. A few swipes, if you're maintaining that knife and, you know, not wearing it down to where it's just like a butter knife, then you should be able to just use the fine stone and hit that thing a few times and restore your quality of your edge.